Hello dear friends, in this video I'm gonna show you dozens of little known Nuraghes from Sardinia, which we visited in March 2019.
This side for 2 meters. Yep.
So how many Nuraghes are there in Sardinia? Well, over 7 or 8,000 are mapped, mostly by private enthusiasts, it seems, those who tell us what the history was on TV don't seem to bother that much to study the actual sites on the ground. But in terms of an estimate of the total number, a minimum of 30,000 seems to be kind of realistic based on what we observed actually when we were there. So many of the Nuraghes have deteriorated quite a lot. They are in such condition as this one, barely recognizable, and yet others were clearly used as source of building materials for nearby structures. We could recognize that because the Nuraghe stones are very peculiar actually. So since we found many Nuraghes which were basically disappearing in the current historic moment, it is very likely that many have disappeared already. And the minimum of 30,000 estimate may sound a little bit too much for such actually quite grandiose buildings, but it is realistic because when we were there we could get to the top of some of the Nuraghes, and one would be usually able to see at least few other Nuraghes on the horizon still standing. This is the kind of a view you get when you climb on one of the Nuraghes.
train a monkey, a little monkey, with a camera.
Luckily, most of the Nuraghes have not been turned into tourist attractions and simply lay abandoned in the fields or in private properties. Luckily, it is just too many of them, and the penguins couldn't put their flippers on all of them and destroy them with so-called restoration. This is a typical example of what can happen to a beautiful nuraghe if it suffers penguinian flipper restoration. Beautiful main structure made of huge stones is surrounded by so many other buildings made of monkey quality work, modern, that at the end the big stone masonry is difficult to see. Here we found them preparing yet another nuraghe for the tourists, building it. And there were also archaeologists at this nuraghe, and I asked them, because they spoke English, how much of what the tourists see is restoration and how much is original. And they replied to me, of course everything is restoration, there is nothing original. But eventually we figured out how to easily recognize the original parts, and the modern ones in the Nuraghes that have been penguinified. It's very easy. The original parts have mud as mortar, while the modern stuff is made with cement. Luckily, they did not turn all of the best Nuraghes into tourist attractions, and it is still possible to find very impressive, genuine, untouched Nuraghes just laying out there in the fields without having their original spirit destroyed. Not very comfortable to use a bow.
Trenda fil citu karam fil citu done mamino done trenda fil citu karam fil citu done mamino trenda fil citu karam fil citu done mamino done a come sakash primenda doi deshe done yachete vorim na novi pasar done mamino done
This particular nuraghe was not renovated. It was in its original state, and it had these secondary buildings around the main building. But because they were original as well, they were also made of the typical old stones, rather large ones. So it is not that the settlements around the Nuraghes are purely fantasy of the restoration teams. They did exist. However, the restoration teams are not using the proper technique as it was originally done. This is another restored Nuraghe. The reason for using wrong masonry approach in restoring could be just because they believe that people were primitive in those times, so they make primitive things for the exhibitions, or it could be as simple as being too difficult for them to handle such large stones. This is how heavy they are, and not only you need to transport them, but also they need to be lifted many times so that they are placed properly. The ancient builders certainly did an excellent job because their masterpieces withstood the onslaughts of time for certainly hundreds and possibly even thousands of years, according to mainstream dating. And this is the real me grazing at the Nuraghes of Sardinia. I have always been very much into using wild plants as food. But I think that is especially important at places the history of which I want to find out, because the plants also have memory, and the heritage of these plants may help me trace the real history of the given place. I hope you have also noticed the considerably improved quality of the video footage in this video, thanks to those who were kind to send donations, which allowed me to get the proper camera. And this unique Sardinia expedition was made possible actually by Simon, in Italian that is Simone, who I think is one of the greatest souls walking the earth in Italy and possibly the entire earth. I think Dante and Nuraghes hybrid.
Yeah.
We also saw such long things in one of the castles in Jordan,
Oh,
the desert castles.
that are
Similar to-
supposed to be from the Crusades.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
And also in Angkor Wat, all the ceilings are like this.
Oh.
This type of non-modal.
How big is Angkor Wat?
Oh, the complex.
Yeah.
The complex is big. It's the biggest historic site in the world. Did you notice these strange sounds in the recordings? They occur only at the doors or inside the Nuraghes. More about this in the next episode, which will be about who and why built all these intriguing structures, often consisting of really giant stones, and which in most cases lay pretty much abandoned without any study out there in the windy fields of Sardinia.
Tako glazvela